Chapter 4001. This was really the fake overlord? Such a strong aura? The fake overlord could make them feel such a strong sense of oppression. Everyone's suspicious gazes shifted towards the man beside Yiqing Luo. They were silently comparing the both of them. Yiqing Luo naturally saw through everyone's thoughts. She raised her brows slightly as her long and narrow eyes rose. Such an obvious thing, do you still need to guess? She actually suspected that the man beside her was an imposter? No matter how strong that imposter's aura was, could it be as strong as her Zhou Xian? Yiqing Luo's words had admitted that the man beside her was the real overlord. Everyone naturally believed in Madame D's words. One by one they shifted their gazes towards the imposter. The moment the imposter heard Yiqing Luo's words, his eyes wavered as his deep eyes turned towards Yiqing Luo. In the depths of his eyes, there were traces of unknown emotions. His brows creased even tighter. He was silently pondering on what method he should use to leave this place first. Suddenly, a slender figure dashed over. In his arms, a ball of warmth fell into his arms. A lady's sharp and crazy voice was heard. "Where are your eyes? Don't you have any brains? If she says that imposter is the real one, then it's the real one?" The person who dashed out was Wuxia. Her arms hugged the imposter tightly as she had yet to tidy up her messy clothes. Her shoulder was half exposed and the fair skin on her neck was filled with sporadic marks. Everyone could see that. What was she doing earlier? A sliver of disgust flashed past the imposter's eyes as he stretched out his hand to push Wuxia away. But Wuxia hugged him even tighter. The lady's suppressed threatening voice was heard. "Since you're impersonating the overlord, you must have your own motive, right? Don't tell me you want to admit defeat like this?" The imposter's body stiffened slightly. Wuxia took a look at the imposter as she loosened her grip on him and held his arm as she spoke righteously to the crowd. "The person beside me is the real overlord." Everyone, what on earth was going on? The commotion was getting bigger and bigger. More and more people were attracted over. Some people had heard that two venerable sovereigns had appeared here, so they had come all the way here to find out what was going on. Wuxia's face was filled with anger as she pointed at Yiqing Luo and complained, "This jealous woman, because she was jealous of me, she intentionally found someone to impersonate the overlord, trying to ruin my reputation. She also wants to force the overlord to return to her side." The more she spoke, the angrier she became. Her chest was heaving up and down in anger. When I heard her mention something about impersonating or not, I felt that something was wrong. As expected, she actually wanted to use such a method to destroy me. Destroy Lord Dizun. You're so cruel. What? Did Madame D find someone to impersonate Dizun? Based on what the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City is saying, that the Lady Monarch wants everyone to think that the Lord Overlord that the Empyrean Fairy mentioned is actually a fake, so that the relationship between the Empyrean Fairy and the Lord Overlord is clear. If that's the case, the Empyrean Fairy's reputation will be ruined. However, we can't be sure that what the mysterious Lady of Shadowless City said is true. Someone else raised a different opinion. Everyone discussed spiritedly and there were many different opinions. Whereas the person involved didn't say a single word. Wuxia hugged the imposter's arm tightly as she lowered her head slightly, as her lips curled into a sneer which no one could see. Her eyes were filled with scarlet madness. Chapter 4002. Anyway, this imposter was exactly the same as the overlord. As long as the imposter cooperated, then he would become the real overlord. And that real overlord was the fake one. By then everyone would know that she, Wuxia, was the overlord's woman, the future imperial madam. The imposter was only slightly stunned as she understood Wuxia's thinking. He squinted his peach blossom eyes as his peripheral vision swept past Yiqing Luo. After seeing that smirk of ridicule on her lips, his pupils flashed slightly. Immediately after, his long arm moved and hooked Wuxia into his arms. The expression on his face was filled with nobility and laziness. His half-squinted peach blossom eyes reflected a sharp and dignified aura. He slowly curled his thin lips as he imitated Zhou Xian's temperament to perfection. "Lan is too mischievous. Since Lil Luo wants to use this method to punish me, then let her torment me." His cold and deep voice carried a hint of indifference. Wuxia was stunned for a moment. When the crowd heard this, they looked at Yiqing Luo in astonishment and then looked at the imposter. This tone, this expression, it totally belonged to the overlord. He felt that Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's accusation was very credible. Overlord Lan's reputation can be ruined, but Lan absolutely cannot bear to see the Overlord being doubted. Wuxia looked at the impostor affectionately. Following that, her expression changed into a solemn one as she stared angrily at Yiqing Luo, reprimanding her with righteous indignation. Imperial Madam, since you've already decided to let me and Imperial Madam be together, why do you need to play such tricks behind my back? By doing this, you're simply creating trouble for the Overlord. Have you ever thought that if everyone believed you and treated an impostor as the real Lord Dizun, how much damage would it do to the Lord Dizun? You're simply too willful. She pursed her lips tightly as she put on a magnanimous and virtuous look. You're the Imperial Madam, so you should take up the responsibility of the Imperial Palace's mistress. Don't always do things based on your own preferences, you should also consider the Overlord. Her attitude was just short of saying, you're not worthy of Dizun, you're not worthy of being the mistress of the Imperial Palace. The impostor caressed Wuxia's head, a hint of gentleness seeping out of her shimmering almond-shaped eyes. He raised his thin lips and said, I really like Lanner more and more. Wuxia lowered her head shyly. When he lowered his eyes, sneaking a peek at Yiqing Luo, he shot a complacent look. She wanted to see how Yiqing Luo was going to turn the situation around. Even if Yiqing Luo explained that the person beside her was the real Overlord, there would also be people who would question it. Unless Yiqing Luo could produce some special evidence. Proof that the impostor was not the Overlord. Wuxia was not worried about this. After all, if Yiqing Luo really had the evidence, he had already taken it out earlier. He wasn't trying to trick the impostor. The two of them were so similar. It could definitely pass off as genuine. His heart was valiant and spirited, but when his gaze fell onto Yiqing Luo, the smile on Wuxia's face froze. Because Yiqing Luo had her arms crossed over her chest from the start to the end, with a "I'll just quietly watch you make things up" attitude. The cold arc on her lips seemed to be filled with ridicule and ridicule. As though she was looking at a jumping clown. Totally not putting her in her eyes. Wuxia's expression slowly twisted as her eyes turned scarlet and sinister. Slut. Slut. What was she laughing at? Chapter 4003. As long as she could make this impostor become the real Overlord. She wanted to see if Yiqing Luo could still use this kind of expression to look at her. Wuxia's heart was totally twisted. Her malevolent face was horrifying and hideous. Imperial Madam, is what Shadowless City's mysterious maiden said true? That person is really someone whom Imperial Madam specially found to impersonate the Overlord? Someone asked in a soft voice. Although a large portion of her heart believed Wuxia's words. But out of courtesy and respect, she still needed to hear it from Imperial Madam personally before it could be counted. Looking at the crowd in front of her, more and more people started to swarm over. Numerous different gazes fell onto her. Yiqing Luo's lips were still as calm as before, with a slight smile of ridicule. Her expression had not changed at all. She curled her lower lips as her long and narrow eyes squinted, meeting that person's gaze as she replied calmly, "The real can't be faked, the fake can't be real." Obviously, her tone was calm and gentle. But the aura that came head-on. This caused the person who asked the question to take a step back, and a feeling of fear arose in his heart. The real can't be faked, the fake can't be real. What did this sentence mean? Was she admitting that the man beside her was a fake Overlord, unable to become the real Overlord? Or was she expressing that the man beside her was the real Overlord, no matter what Wuxia said, it couldn't be faked? Hey, in the end you didn't answer his question directly. You don't dare to insist that he is the real Overlord because you have a guilty conscience. Wuxia interrupted with a cold laugh. Following that, she controlled the rhythm. Imperial Madam, since the matter has already been exposed, you might as well admit it. Otherwise, the Overlord's reputation will be completely ruined. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she looked at Wuxia with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Following that, it fell onto the impostor. Her lips curled as she gave a light smile. How long do you think you can be the Overlord? Lil Luo is still angry at me. The impostor sighed faintly. If you say I'm fake, then I'm fake. When Wuxia heard this, she suddenly raised her head and glared fiercely at the impostor. In the next instant, he was pressed into the impostor's embrace. He curled his thin lips and said helplessly, I know that the matter between me and Lana has caused you to be in a bad mood, but Lana is now my woman. No matter how unhappy you are, you should try to accept Lana's existence. Finishing, he lowered his head slightly as though he was comforting the person in his arms. If little Luo is happy, we will do as she says, but Lana will have to suffer. Only then did Muqilan relax. She thought the impostor was going to admit it. Unexpectedly, it was also a bitter play. This kind of retreat in order to advance would only make people feel that he was the real Lord Dizun. Even if he couldn't be sure whether he was Dizun, then they would absolutely doubt the authenticity of Zhou Xian's identity. No matter what everyone thought, this move had advantages and no disadvantages. Yiqing Luo raised her hand and made a gesture to stop the impostor from speaking. She looked straight at the impostor and her charming eyes were slightly stern. Don't call me randomly, it's disgusting. Little Luo heir. This address belonged exclusively to Zhou Xian. Only Zhou Xian had called it out, which made her heart flutter. The impostor's eyes flickered slightly. Her eyes were dark and gloomy with some unknown treachery. Chapter 4004. Don't tell me. Lil Luo wants to hear him. The impostor's stern gaze shot towards Zhou Xian as his expression sunk. Call you? Our exclusive nickname? Yiqing Luo. She really wanted to beat him to death. What should she do? Actually, directly taking action was the fastest way to solve this. After all, if the impostor was the real overlord, then it was impossible that he couldn't defeat the fake overlord. As long as Zhou Xian beat the impostor to the extent that even his parents couldn't recognize him, who was real and who was fake would naturally be differentiated. But exposing the impostor wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was, who was the impostor? Who was the person behind this? What was his motive? Zhou Xian was in the Earth realm and the other party came to the Earth realm, moreover impersonating Zhou Xian right under his nose. This was absolutely not normal. So they had to find out what secret was hidden behind this impostor. Forget it. The impostor suddenly sighed as a sliver of helplessness surfaced on his expression. Lil Luo is still angry. I won't argue with you about the address. When your emotions have stabilized, I'll look for you again. Following that, his gaze shot towards Zhou Xian. That gaze was indifferent and his tone carried a sliver of indifference. You take good care of Madame D, don't mess around. Saying that, he grabbed Muqilan as he leapt up. The two figures disappeared in front of everyone. Everyone was dumbstruck. What did Dizun mean by that? Could it be that man beside Madame D was the Overlord's secret guard? No wonder he looked exactly the same as the Overlord. Commonly known as substitute. For example, those who were highly regarded in large forces and had high statuses would look for people with similar figures, faces, voices, and so on from a young age and nurture them. To nurture them to become their substitute. Once something happened, there would be a substitute to block the knife for them. Everyone naturally treated Zhou Xian as the Overlord's substitute secret guard. Which meant that Zhou Xian was impersonating the Overlord. Yiqing Luo looked at the direction where the impostor and Muqilan left. Her half-lidded eyes twitched. Her pink lips curled as her smile deepened. She exchanged glances with Zhou Xian. Immediately after, they raised their qi at the same time and with a slight movement of their bodies, they disappeared from the inn. Where's Madame D? What happened? Where's Madame D? The fake overlord is also gone. Could it be that Lady Monarch has been exposed by the Empyrean Lady of Shadowless City and is now angry? You haven't explained it clearly. Why did you run away? At this time, the two of them were already quickly following the impostor and Muqilan's aura. The impostor was very fast. In the blink of an eye, he had already rushed into the West Cliff Mountain. The lush trees had luxuriant branches and leaves and their roots crisscrossed. In an instant, the impostor and Muqilan's figures were completely hidden. Chasing into the West Cliff Mountain, Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian stopped in their tracks. After looking around once, Lin Fan said. Both of their gazes stopped at the same time behind the lush trees, at the towering mountains that pierced through the clouds. The impostor must have gone to the end of Xia Mountain, to the other side of the mountain range known as the Forbidden Area. Because the impostor knew that they had caught up. The entire forest was probably not safe at all. Only the mountains in the Forbidden Area were the safest. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. She didn't know if it was a misconception. Chapter 4005. A very thick death qi. Dmo Xian frowned slightly as he looked at the gloomy black qi from afar. Death qi? Yiqing Luo was stunned. Indeed it looked like death qi. Because just by looking at it she felt an oppressive feeling in her heart. As though it could easily draw out the most painful and despairing memories in one's heart. Filled with despair and loneliness, the aura of death. If it's death qi, why? This forest is so lush? Totally unaffected by the death qi? Generally speaking, if it was a place where the death qi lingered, the more intense and dense the death qi, in the radius of 1,000 miles, there wouldn't be any signs of life. Not to mention it was lush with foliage and trees. Not only this forest is unaffected, that mountain range over there which is surrounded by the death qi, is also lush with foliage. This was Dmo Xian's first time seeing such a situation. The place where the death qi lingered. A stretch of green. The foliage was so lush that it totally didn't look like it was surrounded by the death qi. The impostor pulled Mu Qilon into that mountain. Will she be affected by the death qi? Yiqing Luo raised her head and looked at the sky which was surrounded by the death qi and had darkened. If a person was tainted by the death qi, he wouldn't be far from death. Not to mention such a thick death qi. That person intentionally lured us into that mountain. Dmo Xian's eyes narrowed slightly as the expression on his face turned solemn. What you mean is, that mountain has a trap? Yiqing Luo asked. Dmo Xian nodded. Follow me closely. He knew that if he asked Yiqing Luo to leave, Yiqing Luo would not agree to it. It was also impossible for her to let him enter the deep mountain alone. Most importantly, before knowing the other party's motive, he was unable to be assured to leave Yiqing Luo alone. The two of them exchanged glances as their hands clenched tightly as they entered the West Cliff Mountain together. 7 turns and 8 turns. The two of them quickly reached the deepest part of the West Cliff Mountain. Standing at the foot of the deep mountain range, Yiqing Luo felt that thick black yin qi coming towards her. As though it had opened its huge mouth. As though it was going to swallow her. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. Dmo Xian's long arm pulled her into his embrace as his tall and broad body blocked off all the layers of lingering death qi. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo looked at the numerous yin qi, crashing onto Dmo Xian's back. Her little hands immediately clutched his sleeves tightly. These don't affect me at all. Dmo Xian replied nonchalantly. Yiqing Luo looked at Dmo Xian's expression worriedly, and after ascertaining that there wasn't any change in his expression, she then set her heart at ease. She buried her head in his embrace. The aura of death can even attack people. Then, how can I enter this mountain? Don't you still have me? Dmo Xian held her little hand. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips. This place is obviously very dangerous. If you keep on protecting me like this, it will only cause both of us to fall into danger. She did not want to be a burden to Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian chuckled and squeezed her little hand. Look. Yiqing Luo looked at their interlocked hands in puzzlement. He saw, a stream of purple and red light suddenly appeared in their hands. The rays of light intertwined one after another. Tightly it encircled Yiqing Luo entirely. That was the rays from the profound phoenix ring and profound dragon ring. Yiqing Luo stared in astonishment at the intertwining rays from the two rings. Chapter 4006. This is. Yiqing Luo looked at the two rings in astonishment as they burst forth with radiance. Dmo Xian laughed lightly. When the profound dragon ring and profound phoenix ring are worn by two lovers who have the same thoughts, when combined together, they will be able to unleash the greatest power of the profound dragon ring and profound phoenix ring. His slender fingers tapped Yiqing Luo's profound phoenix ring. This is just one of the small functions of this pair of ancient love rings. Immediately after, he suppressed his voice as he teased. If you want to activate more functions of the love rings, Lil Luo, or we'll have to research more with me on this pair of love rings. It was obviously a serious sentence. It came out from a man's mouth. But it seemed to be filled with another layer of meaning. Yiqing Luo's cheeks inexplicably blushed. Dmo Xian's gaze on her deepened. Yiqing Luo immediately lowered her head as she looked at her hands which were intertwined with Dmo Xian's. The radiance reflected by the dragon phoenix love ring wrapped her up like a cocoon, airtight. Xian then tentatively let go of her. Death Qi surged wildly from all directions, crashing over. But when it touched her, she was instantly repelled. Two streams of light formed a protective cover, trapping Yiqing Luo firmly within. It can even have such a function. It was simply a protective talisman. With this protective cover, these Death Qi had no effect on her at all. After confirming her safety, the two of them stepped into the mountain range. West Cliff Mountain was called as a mountain, naturally not because of that stretch of forest which the citizens of the Earth Realm had spread was famous, but because of the mountain range in the depths of the forest, which was the mountain peak which Yiqing Luo and Xian were stepping into now. A place where Death Qi lingered. The surroundings were lush with foliage. Thick and strong trees one after another with no end in sight. On the ground was a large patch of branches and vines, with broken leaves covering the ground. If it wasn't for the floating Death Qi in the air, Yiqing Luo really felt that this place was filled with nature's atmosphere as a tourist spot. This totally incongruous feeling made Yiqing Luo's heart give birth to some cautiousness. She followed beside Xian in small steps as her little hand held his big palm tightly. That impostor led them here. Could it be that he himself could avoid the Death Qi here? He also had Wuxia with him. Their footsteps were light and slow. Every step and every movement was a test. They went all the way until they were about halfway up the mountain. Yiqing Luo vaguely detected a trace of peculiarity. Before he could tell Xian, his waist suddenly tightened. Xian had already hugged her tightly, both feet off the ground. She fell into Xian's arms. Xian's figure moved and both of them landed steadily on the luxuriant tree trunk. The dense foliage completely concealed their figures. Yiqing Luo nestled in Xian's arms. The purplish-red light swirling around his body shrank in an instant. It formed a thin protective barrier. It was extremely inconspicuous, but it still protected her from being corroded by the Death Qi. What are you trying to do? A panting, obviously exhausted voice questioned someone. However, that person clearly had no intention of replying. His voice became even angrier. You imposter. What the hell is this place? Why is my body becoming weirder and weirder, my strength? What are you trying to do to me? Shut up. The cold and deep voice was 90% similar to Xian's. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. It was that imposter in Wuxia. Chapter 4007. Through the lush leaves, Yiqing Luo saw a tall figure walking out not too far away. His purple robe looked even more slender through the gaps between the leaves. Bearing the exact same face as Xian, his face was filled with impatience and indifference. Wasn't that the person who pretended to be Xian? Next to the imposter Roland. It was Wuxia, whose clothes were disheveled and who was in a sorry state. At this moment he was kneeling on the ground. His clothes and hair were covered in mud and withered leaves. Wuxia gasped for air, one of her hands still gripping tightly onto the imposter's trousers. Her face was pale and there was pain hidden between her brows. This place makes me very uncomfortable. I can't stay here any longer. Send me out, send me out. The imposter raised her leg without hesitation and kicked her to the side. Wuxia rolled a few times on the ground. She was in so much pain that her petite body was curled up and trembling uncontrollably. The aura of death in the surroundings continued to surge towards her. She could almost feel the aura of death approaching. Wuxia's eyes were bloodshot. Gnashing her teeth, she glared at the imposter and said, "If I die, no one will be able to prove that you are the real Lord Sovereign. Didn't you want to impersonate Dizun? Without me, you wouldn't have been able to impersonate me successfully." The imposter raised her shimmering peach blossom eyes and raised her thin lips into a sarcastic smile. "I am the Venerable Emperor. Do I need your proof? Even without you, I still succeeded, didn't I? At the very least, the virgin body of the mysterious fairy of Shadowless City has been given to me, hasn't it?" His mocking tone and those humiliating words. It made Wuxia even angrier. His entire face was contorted. His eyes bulged as if they were about to pop out of his eye sockets. Giving her virginity to an imposter. It was the stupidest decision she had ever made in her life. Furthermore, the imposter twitched the corner of her mouth in a mocking manner. The bait has been cast. Pretending to be Venerable Sovereign. is no longer necessary. When saying this sentence, from Yiqing Luo's angle, he could clearly see a flash of coldness in the imposter's eyes. It seemed that he didn't look like he was impersonating Zhou Xian at all. What's more, he was disgusted by such impersonations. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly as she pondered deeply for a moment, as she exchanged glances with Zhou Xian. In the other party's eyes, she was completely sure that this impostor's purpose was indeed to lure them into this dead mountain. The bait was his fake identity, impersonating the overlord right under Zhou Xian's nose. No matter what, it would attract Zhou Xian and her to investigate it personally. This was the goal of the impostor. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo's expression sunk even deeper. Down below, Mu Qilan shuddered when she heard the impostor's words. What do you mean by that? Your goal, isn't it to impersonate the overlord and replace him? Mu Qilan thought. The person in front of him was one of the substitutes that the overlord had specially trained, because he wanted to become the master. Only then would they rise up to resist. Otherwise, how could there be such similar people in the world? Not only did he deceive her, he had also deceived the people of the major forces. Even those who had seen this impostor wouldn't be able to say for sure that he was an impostor, right? The two of them were so similar. The impostor's goal wasn't to completely replace Zhou Xian. Chapter 4008. Just a mere overlord, what's there for me to spend so much effort to impersonate? Why must I impersonate him to be able to rule the world? As the impostor said that, the expression on her face was slightly distorted. Why did Yiqing Luo felt that this impostor was agitated by that sentence she said earlier? How shameful must you be to use someone else's identity to exist? So concerned about her words? Whereas for Mu Qilan's side, she only felt that the impostor was putting on a brave front. The overlord's identity was the most respectable person in the world. If she could replace the overlord, their days would undergo an earth-shattering change. Anyway, I don't need you anymore. A murderous intent flashed past the impostor's eyes. Her arm was raised. The profound ray turned into a sharp blade as it shot towards Mu Qilan. Mu Qilan's face turned pale as her heart suddenly tightened. Her body speedily rolled sideways. But that sharp blade seemed to have eyes as it made a turn and chased up to her once again. Mu Qilan's sideways roll earlier. She had already exhausted all the energy in her body. The death qi corroded her body and mind. It made her entire body felt as though it was in an ice cellar. She couldn't avoid it. Mu Qilan shut her eyes in despair. The aura of death enveloped her entire body. Bam! A deafening explosion resounded as the profound light rippled in the air, creating ripples in the aftermath. That explosion reverberated in Mu Qilan's ears, reverberating with waves of echoes. But there was no intense pain and agony as she imagined. What was going on? Mu Qilan slowly opened her eyes. What entered her eyes was a fiery red figure. Her skirt fluttered like a burning flame, her fine black hair fluttered without any wind. And that figure was standing right in front of her, helping her to block the impostor's attack. That petite figure was obviously surrounded by the surrounding death qi and profound waves, looking frail and weak. But she stood there steadily, exuding boundless coquettish charm. Just a back view. Mu Qilan recognized the person in front of her, Yiqing Luo. That Yiqing Luo whom she couldn't wait to hack into pieces. It was actually Yiqing Luo. Why did Yiqing Luo save her? Mu Qilan stared blankly at Yiqing Luo's departing figure as her emotions surged, unable to believe her own eyes. But in front of him, the young lady standing was indeed Yiqing Luo. Apparently, the impostor was stunned by Yiqing Luo. By right, Yiqing Luo should hate Mu Qilan. Why did he save Mu Qilan? Yiqing Luo's fingertips moved and the glower flame fan unfolded into a blazing arc. She pressed her pink lips together and smiled faintly. This person can't die yet. She did not care about Mu Qilan's life or death. But now, because of the matter of the real and fake Zhou Xian, everyone was questioning Zhou Xian's identity. If Mu Qilan were to die at this moment, it would only make people think that he was trying to silence them. Even if Zhou Xian were to produce any evidence to prove that he was the real Zhou Xian, perhaps there would also be people who had doubts. Whereas for someone like Zhou Xian, he wouldn't care about what others thought. Even if he was suspected, it didn't matter. But Yiqing Luo didn't wish for Dmo Xian's reputation to be ruined because of this small matter. The source of the real and fake Dmo Xian was Mu Qilan and this imposter. So Mu Qilan couldn't die. The imposter couldn't die either. As long as she was still breathing. Chapter 4009. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her charming eyes glowed with a gloomy red glow. It was just a glance. Mu Qilan felt as if she had fallen into a bottomless quagmire. He struggled in it. But he had sunk into the quagmire. Suffocation, fear, and despair filled her body and mind. His pupils dilated little by little. Her eyes were filled with shock and her entire body was trembling. Yiqing Luo saw Mu Qilan's look and couldn't help but curled her lips into a smile. Asking me for help, are you serious? Falling into my hands won't necessarily be easier than following him. Cold words. It awakened Mu Qilan's consciousness. She pressed her hand against her neck. He was gasping for air. The feeling of almost drowning was too real. It was so real that Mu Qilan didn't even want to think about it. She shrank back as her eyes stared deadly at Yiqing Luo, staring at that carefree and indifferent face which was filled with ridicule. The backbone in her bones told her not to lower her head. But the weakness of the body and the fear of the imposter. She had no choice but to lower her head. Please save me. A voice as soft as the buzz of a mosquito came out of Mu Qilan's mouth. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose as she squinted at Mu Qilan with a smile which didn't look like a smile. With a flick of his finger, a pill fell beside Mu Qilan's feet. Eat it, although it's a little painful, but at least can keep you awake. Yiqing Luo deliberately gave a naughty smile. Only by staying awake can you prevent the death qi from entering your body. Mu Qilan stared at the pills that were stained with mud and her own blood, not daring to reach out her hand to take them. Although she had begged Yiqing Luo for help. But he was very clear in his heart. Yiqing Luo was not a good person at all. There was no way he really wanted to save her. This pill was very likely to be the most poisonous poison. After Yiqing Luo threw the pill to her, she didn't bother about Mu Qilan anymore. Instead, he raised his head and looked smilingly at the man who looked exactly like Dmo Xian. You tried so many ways to lure me over, and now that I'm here, shouldn't you make your motive clear? The imposter's deep eyes stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, his expression sunk slightly. You know about it? If you knew, why did you still come in? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Why did this person's tone sound like he was blaming her? She clearly knew that this mountain was dangerous, yet she still wanted to take the risk? Wasn't that his goal? If she didn't enter this mountain, didn't that mean that he had failed his mission? Yiqing Luo didn't know what this imposter was trying to do. Perhaps he realized that his reaction was a little off. The imposter's face sank and she clenched her fists. Since you're already here, then don't even think about leaving. He glanced around and asked, where is the venerable sovereign? He doesn't seem like someone who would let you enter a dangerous place alone. As soon as he finished speaking, a hurricane appeared. Profound ripples surged violently like tide water, pouring out in torrents. In that instant, the black yin qi in the area dissipated. Even the air was twisted by this hurricane. A purple figure flashed past his eyes. A tyrannical aura gushed out in all directions. Bang! A powerful force slammed into the imposter's chest. The imposter felt an intense pain in her body and mind. His internal organs felt as though they were shattered. He fell onto the ground. His body was in so much pain that he couldn't move. Turning his head slightly, he saw a slender figure standing beside Yiqing Luo. Not knowing when a slender figure had appeared. Dmo Xian. Chapter 4010. The imposter clutched his chest as his pupils widened as he stared at Dmo Xian with hatred. The jealousy and hatred in his eyes were obvious. Meeting the imposter's jealous and hateful eyes, Dmo Xian raised his brows slightly as his thin lips curled into a smile which didn't look like a smile. His peach blossom eyes squinted. No wonder you're this lord's imposter, you understand me quite well. His tone was as light as the wind. There wasn't any fluctuation in his emotions. Immediately after, he hooked his arm around Yiqing Luo's waist as he intimately kissed the young lady's forehead. His smile deepened. This lord indeed will not bear to let Lil Luo or take the risk alone. The imposter's pupils suddenly contracted. His eyes stared intently as they embraced intimately. The imposter fell onto the ground. And Zhou Xian just stood there looking down at him from above. That kind of feeling was really annoying. Couldn't wait to destroy his arrogance, his everything. The imposter's hands clutched his robe tightly in front of his chest. Surging hatred and anger surged in his chest. Suddenly, the imposter's palms slammed onto the ground. A loud explosion was heard. The imposter had already turned into a purple afterimage as he flipped himself up from the ground. In a split second, the surrounding death chi immediately surged towards him as it quickly gathered. In just a moment, the imposter's body was surrounded by a terrifying black death chi. Layers and layers of death chi filled the air, as though it was going to swallow everything around it. The imposter's eyes were icy cold as his hands flipped and clenched his palms tightly as a terrifying profound ray was shot out, mixed with the lingering death chi. The palm wind swept across the dark sky as it charged towards Zhou Xian. Bam! Another explosion was heard. The surrounding air was vibrating. The air was filled with dense black death chi. Looking at the profound ray which was intertwined with the death chi, Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly. The moment the palm wind neared, her feet moved slightly. At the same time, Zhou Xian's sleeves fluttered as he swept away the purple flowing clouds. Vast and majestic profound energy burst forth. It instantly formed a hurricane. The hurricane and the palm wind collided. One after another, the lush trees were uprooted and knocked against each other. Even the ground had large cracks on it. Rumble. With the sound of mountains collapsing, the two forces dissipated at the same time. Everything around him had been reduced to ruins. Chi waves surged and smoke billowed. Zhou Xian slowly withdrew his hand. His expression was calm without a hint of strain. Ah Xian. Yiqing Luo pounced towards him, her hands naturally hugging his waist. On the man's body there was a hint of a cold aura. Zhou Xian rubbed her head as his thin lips curled up slightly. I'm fine, but you have to be careful. It's indeed as you've guessed, the death chi here can become that imposter's energy. As soon as he discovered the imposter and Mu Qilan, Yiqing Luo saw that the imposter wasn't affected by the death chi at all. Coupled with what Zhou Xian had said earlier, the imposter was intentionally luring them. Yiqing Luo roughly guessed it. The aura of death here was indirectly related to the imposter. This was a test. Sure enough, this made Yiqing Luo recall a long time ago. In South Continent, the dark forces had done the same thing. The aura of death here was absolutely not simple. There was a possibility. It was related to the Nether Palace. This thought made Yiqing Luo's eyelids drooped slightly. If it was related to the Nether Palace, then the imposter in front of her. Chapter 40:11. Through the spiraling smoke. Yiqing Luo could vaguely see the imposter behind the smoke, standing shakily in midair. Apparently, the imposter no longer had the energy to float in midair. After struggling for a while, he finally gave up and landed on the ground. After that, he raised his head and shot a sharp gaze towards Zhou Xian. Even though he was already at a disadvantage, his imposing manner had not diminished at all. A strong aura burst out from his entire body, turning into a sharp blade, twisting around Zhou Xian. Zhou Xian only lifted his eyelids. His eyes flickered slightly. A gust of hurricane appeared around him. The hurricane swept up, blowing away the surrounding smoke. The two forces collided once again. Following the collision of the two forces, the surrounding death chi, wave after wave, surged towards the imposter who was half kneeling on the ground. Following the thickening of the death chi, little by little the imposter stood up straight. Both hands clenched into fists, raising them up high. An earth-shattering roar came from his mouth. The death chi surged faster and faster. His entire body was almost submerged in it. The boundless aura of death caused the black hair on the imposter's shoulders to dance wildly. His sleeves fluttered, his hazy face revealed some malevolence. The imposter at this moment. Where was the slightest bit of Zhou Xian's temperament? The entire person was like a devil who had turned into a demon, malevolent and terrifying. Not knowing why, when she saw this heart-wrenching, raging imposter, Yiqing Luo felt that there was something strangely familiar about this person, as though she had seen him somewhere before. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly, looking at the both of them not making any moves, merely using their thoughts to release their profound energy to battle. Just as she was about to open her mouth. Just at this moment, Xian suddenly retracted his profound energy. His sleeves moved. The surging airwaves returned to tranquility. He grabbed Yiqing Luo's slender waist and retreated out of the imposter's attack range. Xian's sudden abandonment of attack made the imposter slightly stunned. The deathly aura around him also froze in the air. Under the influence of the death qi, the imposter's face turned pale. Xian, what do you mean by this? Looking down on him. At the most critical juncture, he retracted all of his battle intent. He broke away from the battle. What was this? Xian looked at the imposter indifferently as his peach blossom eyes narrowed slightly. If you continue to absorb the death qi, I'm afraid you'll really become a dead person. The imposter was stunned. The coldness in his body, eroded by the aura of death, made him feel like he was in an ice house. Indeed, it was getting harder and harder for him to sense the existence of his aura. However, these words coming out from Xian's mouth. How ironic. The imposter snickered. The deathly aura on her body surged uneasily. What? Does the Overlord feel sorry for an imposter like me and doesn't want me to die? Xian glanced at him indifferently. Nothing answered his desire. He merely moved his fingertips expressionlessly. The purple profound light was as dazzling as a star. When the profound light landed on the imposter's body, little by little, the layers of deathly aura were dispelled. When the death qi dispersed from his body, the imposter lost all of his supporting strength. His body swayed as he half knelt on the ground. He forced himself to hold on to maintain his body and completely collapsed. What do you mean? The imposter's face twitched as anger surged. If Xian killed him directly, he might feel better in his heart. But Xian actually stopped midway. Chapter 40:12. Facing the imposter's venomous gaze, which was filled with death aura. Xian was expressionless as he replied indifferently, I don't want to kill you anymore. 5 indifferent words, calm and icy cold. He said it in such a casual manner. It was as if she had suddenly lost interest in this toy of hers. The imposter's heart constricted as his gaze turned chilly. Xian, I don't need your pity. Pity? Xian scoffed as though he had heard a joke. The imposter's pupils contracted slightly. That's right, would the Overlord pity him? Then why? Would Xian show mercy? Or that kind of indifferent attitude? Show mercy. Apparently, Xian didn't intend to give him an answer. Instead he glanced sideways and looked at the young lady beside him as he spoke in a warm voice. Let's leave this place first. This sudden development made Yiqing Luo dumbstruck. She didn't understand why Xian suddenly let the imposter off. Shouldn't he catch the imposter and expose his identity? Then force out the ultimate motive? But since Xian had chosen to do this, naturally he had his reasons. Yiqing Luo didn't probe further as she nodded her head towards Xian. The imposter saw that the both of them were intending to leave, and a sense of humiliation arose from the bottom of his heart. His face flushed red, and that face, which was exactly the same as Xian's, twisted. If you want to leave this place, you have to ask for my permission first. As the imposter said that, he pounced towards Xian. The surrounding condensed black death aura once again surged over. But just as the imposter was about to get close to Xian, the man raised his head slightly. A pair of eyes that were as cold as frost slowly landed on his body. Inexplicably, it made the imposter's actions stiffen on the spot. That ice-cold gaze seemed to be able to freeze the surrounding air. The imposter's face trembled as he wanted to speak. But when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he couldn't spit them out. That gaze stared at him for a long time. The man's thin lips moved slightly. He spat out a cold word. This time take it as me returning you a favor. If you continue to pester me, don't force me to take off your mask in front of little Luo Air. The imposter's eyelashes fluttered and her pupils dilated. His body stiffened and his eyes were filled with disbelief. However, he did not move again. It was as if he was rooted to the spot. Until Yiqing Luo and Xian left his line of sight. He didn't move at all. The aura of death was still lingering around. More and more packages came one after another. But he couldn't get close to the imposter. Not far away, a painful and trembling voice rang out. Lord Dizun, Lady D, don't leave me. Don't leave me. Muchulon struggled to get up from the ground. while rushing towards the direction where Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo had left. At the same time she looked at the impostor cautiously. Until he ran far away. The impostor remained motionless in her original position. She heaved a sigh of relief and immediately chased after Yiqing Luo's footsteps. Under Zhou Xian's lead, the two of them retraced their steps. Earlier the collision between Zhou Xian and the impostor. The radius of 100 miles was in ruins. The ground was filled with broken thick tree branches. The ground was like a spider web, densely packed with fine cracks. Chapter 40:13. If they didn't know each other. Thus he would not bring up the topic of returning the favor. Favor? Who could make Zhou Xian owe a debt of gratitude? Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes in puzzlement and asked again, "That person, do I know him too?" Zhou Xian had mentioned her just now. It seemed that he did not intend to tell her the identity of that person. Zhou Xian lowered his eyes and met the young lady's puzzled eyes as his lips curled upwards. Lil Luo, is so smart, why not make a guess? Yiqing Luo puffed up her cheeks and used her head to knock against his arm. You already know the answer, isn't it better to tell me directly? Why do I have to rack my brain? Zhou Xian smiled without saying a word. His eyes were warm and doting. Wuxia, who was hot on his heels, had just caught up to him when she saw this scene. Obviously, in front of others, Dizun was cold, noble, and had a majestic aura that no one dared to approach. But in front of Yiqing Luo, he had shed all his ruthlessness. The aura around him was gentle and warm. Especially when he looked at Yiqing Luo's gaze, that kind of sincerity and pampering totally without a sliver of space for others to intervene. Wuxia's heart trembled fiercely. At this moment he finally understood. Why was it that from the start till the end, no matter how she acted or how she confidently said that she had an affair with the Overlord, Yiqing Luo had never believed it? The trust between the Overlord and Yiqing Luo was indestructible. Basically, no one could destroy it. In Wuxia's heart, there was a sense of disappointment and frustration. She was unwilling and jealous, but there was nothing she could do. At this moment, suddenly Wuxia saw something. Her pupils constricted and she cried out sharply, "Watch out behind you." It was an instinctive reaction. After she yelled out this sentence, his eyes were filled with endless fear. He subconsciously turned around and ran. Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian were walking. Suddenly he heard Wuxia's terrified cry. He turned his head. Vines that filled the sky came crashing down, covering the sky and covering the earth. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk as she swiftly drew out the glower flame fan and moved her 5 fingers. The blazing red light slashed down. Zhou Xian swept his sleeves. It sliced the twisting vines in front of it into pieces. But this has no practical effect. In the next instant more vines swarmed over, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. The vines seemed to have their own consciousness. One after another they twisted around him. What is this? In Yiqing Luo's mind, an image of the man-eating plant emerged. These vines, could it be that they wanted to entangle her and Zhou Xian together and then eat them up? It was no wonder that she had a strange feeling when she first entered the mountain. However, he didn't think too deeply about what was strange about it. Only now did he realize it. There were too many vines on this mountain. Such verdant, long and messy vines should not have appeared in the mountains surrounded by the aura of death. Could it be that this was the real motive of the impostor luring her and Zhou Xian into the mountains? Help! Help! Suddenly, a shrill scream could be heard. When Wuxia was escaping, how could her speed be faster than these vines? In the blink of an eye, a few vines wrapped around his legs. Wuxia fell to the ground, being dragged back by the vines. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. This Wuxia temporarily couldn't die. Not to mention that she needed Wuxia to verify that Zhou Xian wasn't an impostor. Chapter 40:14. Otherwise, those vines would have already succeeded in getting him. After all, these vines were lifeless. She really didn't notice the approach of the vines at all. Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian exchanged glances. The two of them leaped at the same time. Yiqing Luo raised the glower flame fan in her hands as she speedily cut off the vines which were entangled around Wuxia's leg. Zhou Xian's sleeves fluttered slightly as an invisible air wave spread out, forcing back the vines that were rushing towards the young lady and Wuxia. Wuxia, grab me. Yiqing Luo landed beside Muqilan and was just about to stretch out her hand to grab Muqilan. As soon as Muqilan regained her freedom, she cried out in fear, "Lord Dizun!" Immediately after, he knocked Yiqing Luo away and pounced towards Zhou Xian. Muqilan's face was extremely pale, her face filled with fear and astonishment. In her eyes, she totally didn't notice Yiqing Luo, who was trying to save her. This was Muqilan's instinctive reaction. She just wanted to jump into Dizun's arms and seek comfort. But she ignored it. This Lord Dizun was the real Lord Dizun, not a fake. The instant she pounced over, she was stopped by Zhou Xian's profound energy, separating the distance between them. Master Dizun. Muqilan's spine immediately turned chilly as she looked at Zhou Xian in trepidation. She attempted to use a pitiful expression to soften Zhou Xian. But as soon as she raised her head, she met the man's sharp and cold eyes. It was like a sharp blade ruthlessly cutting her. Muqilan's body began to tremble uncontrollably. Her words were stuck in her throat and she couldn't even spit them out. Scram. Zhou Xian icily spat out the first sentence he had ever said to Muqilan. His sleeves fluttered and air currents surged. Muqilan's body was abruptly sent flying, rolling behind the man. He cried out in pain. But Zhou Xian didn't even bother to take another look at her as he looked towards Yiqing Luo. When he saw Yiqing Luo, his pupils constricted as his voice was hoarse and filled with anxiety. Lil Luo, His words had just ended when his figure had already sped up, sprinting straight towards Yiqing Luo. Meanwhile, Yiqing Luo, who was pushed by Muqilan, her man's beauty was indeed very alluring. However, at this critical juncture, in Muqilan's eyes she could only see beauty. Might as well let those vines drag Muqilan away. It was Muqilan's push. It was also Muqilan who threw herself into Zhou Xian's embrace. This gave the vines a chance to take advantage of it. Yiqing Luo only felt a chill under her feet. 2 coils of vines had penetrated the protective barrier on her body and wrapped around her feet without warning. Her heart trembled and she quickly raised her glowing flame fan, wanting to cut off these vines. Countless vines wrapped around her hands. Yiqing Luo. What the hell? He didn't give her any time to react. Immediately after, his entire body felt light, and the scene before his eyes rapidly retreated. By the side of her ears she could vaguely hear Zhou Xian's shocked roar. Lil Luo, And then, more and more vines coiled around his body. In front of him it was pitch black and he could no longer see anything. Damn it! Damn it! This Muqilan was really not an ordinary swindler. It was simply poisonous. Zhou Xian looked at the young lady who had already disappeared, and his entire body seemed to be placed in an ice cellar. His mind instantly went blank. Immediately after, a dark red blood color tainted his entire pupils. His entire body tensed up as the black hair on his shoulders moved without any wind. A dangerous aura lingered around him. Chapter 40:15. Every single word was filled with a terrifying and horrifying aura of danger. His fingers clenched into a fist as his sleeves fluttered. Immediately after, he was about to chase up. Overlord. Don't leave me. How could Muqilan allow the Overlord to leave her behind like that? As she immediately pounced forward, crying out miserably. She had seen with her own eyes how Yiqing Luo was entangled by numerous vines and then disappeared before her eyes. If it wasn't for the Overlord's protection, the next person to be taken away by the vines would be her. She had no idea what kind of monster those vines were. If she was taken away, she would definitely die. Muqilan didn't want to die. So she didn't care about Zhou Xian pushing her away time and time again, rejecting her approach. She pounced towards Zhou Xian. Get lost. Zhou Xian suddenly turned his head back as he flicked his sleeves. Raging profound energy surged out. It crashed onto Muqilan's chest, causing Muqilan to fly out. Her internal organs felt as though they were shattered. The bones in her body felt as though they had been displaced. The pain was indescribable. Her pupils reflected the man's ice-cold eyes, as if he had come from the azura of hell. Ruthless and sharp. If anything happens to Lil Luo, I will make Ling Long Palace Shadowless City. All perish together. Boom, following a loud sound. Muqilan felt her body flying backwards violently. With a bam, she crashed onto a big tree. This crash made Mu Qilan feel extreme pain. This kind of pain made her want to faint. Unfortunately, she had taken that medicinal pill which Yiqing Luo had given her, and her consciousness had remained clear throughout. She could even clearly feel how the bones in her body were broken. Pain. So painful that she was about to die. But unfortunately, her consciousness was still so clear. She fell onto the ground in so much pain that she couldn't even move. Suddenly, she heard a series of footsteps. She heard someone speaking, "There's someone here. There's someone over here. He seems to have flown out from that mountain. Quickly go over and take a look. Who is it? Let's see if we can find out anything from him." This voice sounded familiar. Mu Qilan tried her best to open her eyes. She saw a few figures walking towards her. At the very front were Pei Xing and Gu Zixi. Behind him were Gui Wu, Zhou Mo and Kitty Li. Gu Zixi was the first to crouch down. When she saw Mu Qilan's face clearly, she frowned slightly and said, "It's the Shadowless City's Empyrean Fairy. The Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City was taken away by that fake overlord. Now the Empyrean Fairy of Shadowless City was here. This also meant that they had not found the wrong place. She smells like Big Sister." Kitty Li poked her head out from Zomo's arms and stared at Mu Qilan. She must have come into contact with Big Sister just now. The few of them were following Kitty Li, following Yiqing Luo's scent, chasing her all the way here. Gu Zixi looked at the mountain range in front of her that was shrouded in black mist. It means A Luo and the Overlord are both inside. Kitty wants to go in and look for Big Sister. Kitty Li pursed her lips, her eyes turning red from anxiety. Everyone could see that. Once one got close to this mountain shrouded in black gas, it would cause great harm to one's body. Zhou Xian and Yiqing Luo entered this mountain just like that. Wouldn't that be dangerous? Little Wild Cat, calm down. Zhou Mo hooked Kitty Li as he comforted her warmly. With the Overlord around, little Qing Luo will be fine. Chapter 40:16. Gu Zixi stood up and looked at Gui Wu. "Master, do you think this mountain can we go in?" Gui Wu raised his eyes slightly, looking at the lingering death qi in front of him, his eyes sunk slightly. After a moment he slowly spat out 3 words. "No." "Why not? Sister has already gone in." Kitty Li's eyes widened, her cute little face was filled with displeasure. Gui Wu stared at the death qi, his dark eyes without any extra emotions. "If we go in, we will just be causing trouble for Yiqing Luo and the Overlord." Kitty Li's pouted little mouth twitched, finally snorted out a heavy humph, and buried her head into Zomo's arms. Only knew how to use her sister to threaten her. Zhou rubbed the little head in his arms and looked at Gui Wu helplessly. "Ah Wu, is there any way?" "No." Gui Wu replied simply. Pei Xing immediately panicked. We can only sit here and wait for Ah Luo to come back?" Their gazes were all focused on Gui Wu. A slight frown appeared on Gui Wu's face. A slight fluctuation of emotions appearing on his calm and tranquil face. After a moment, his vision fell back to the sky covered by the black qi and said indifferently, "You guys wait here, I'll go in." "Awu." Zomo's smile sank as he was the first to express his opposition. Gui Wu calmly looked at the little person in his arms. "Are you sure you can go in with me to find someone?" Zhou was stunned, his thin lips tightly pursed, his long and narrow phoenix eyes slightly narrowed. He couldn't go in. If he went in, the little wild cat would definitely follow by his side. The mountain in front of him seemed calm, but in fact it was surging, full of unknown dangers. Zhou couldn't let Kitty Li take the risk. So he couldn't enter the mountain. Gui Wu no longer looked at Zhou. "I'll go in to take a look." After saying that, Gui Wu was about to enter the mountain. Don't go in." Mu Qilan, who was in pain and weak from blood loss, was extremely conscious and could hear their conversation. Her eyes flashed a touch of darkness. She forced herself to take a deep breath and continued, "It's terrible inside. It's all vines, man-eating plants." As she spoke, she took a deep breath and coughed a few times from time to time. It was intermittent, but it was enough for them to understand. "A plant that eats people? Vines?" They looked at each other in dismay. Mu Qilan panted for a moment before forcing herself to continue. "That's right, we can't go in, we'll die. We'll die." Anyway, Yiqing Luo had already been taken away by the vines. It was a narrow escape. Even if the Overlord went to save Yiqing Luo was also a corpse. With His Majesty's ability, even if he was alone, he would be able to return safely. Without Yiqing Luo, the Overlord would belong to her. He absolutely could not allow any reinforcements to enter. He must let Yiqing Luo die completely inside. Mu Qilan made up her mind. But he didn't expect it. She described the situation in the mountains as more and more dangerous. These people would only become more and more worried. Without the slightest hesitation, Gui Wu walked into the mountain. Mu Qilan widened her eyes in astonishment, and in the end she closed them weakly. Why was it different from what he had expected? Knowing that it was dangerous inside, why did they still go in? Could it be that he wasn't afraid of death? Gu Zixi stood by her side as she lifted her leg slightly and gave her a light kick. Chapter 40:17. Inside the mountain. Yiqing Luo felt her body crashing onto the ground. The vines which wrapped around her had apparently stopped dragging. She had just moved. The vines wrapped around her even tighter, as though they were going to embed into her flesh and devour her. In front of her she was entangled into a ball of vines. There was no way to see where she was. But, for now, Yiqing Luo was sure that she was safe. These vines had dragged her here from thousands of miles away. They had no intention to take her life. If these vines were the impostor's ultimate motive, which meant that these vines were arranged by the Nether Palace, the place she was at now, it was related to the Nether Palace. Anything related to the Nether Palace. Her life might not be in danger now. But after this, he was definitely in danger. Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk slightly. Right now the most important thing was to get rid of these vines which wrapped around her. Otherwise, when danger came, she would be helpless and be trampled on. Last Luo, try to use your mental power to control the glower flame fan. Old Man Tsong's voice suddenly rang in her mind. Yiqing Luo got a shock. Old Man Tsong had not made a sound for a long time. Don't be in a daze. These vines have gathered too much death qi. The longer it sticks to your skin, the easier it is to absorb your energy. Old Man Tsong reminded her. Now wasn't the time to ask Old Man Tsong why he had been silent for such a long time. Yiqing Luo gathered her concentration and followed Old Man Tsong's steps to control the glower flame fan. When the glower flame fan was opened, following the release of Yiqing Luo's mental power, the bewitching red glow instantly spread across the surroundings. Through the layers of vines, Yiqing Luo could see the strands of red glow, crisscrossing as it spread out. The vines which wrapped around her became tighter. On her body, streaks of red marks were left. She felt the pain as her brows tightened. She concentrated all her attention on the control of her mental power. But after a moment, Yiqing Luo's body loosened. The vines which wrapped around her broke apart and fell onto the ground. She swiftly clenched her fists tightly as her profound energy shook. The broken vines hanging on his body were all blown away by the dark force. Yiqing Luo raised her head and stretched her four limbs which had been entangled for a long time. Amidst the red light that filled the sky, countless vines that had been torn apart were still dancing wildly along with the Xian wave. Yiqing Luo raised her hand. The devouring flame fan that was floating in the air, like a burning flame, steadily landed on her white fingers. Yiqing Luo gripped the fan handle tightly as her fingertips moved slightly. The devouring flame fan closed. Meanwhile, the bewitching red glow that spread out in all directions and the profound wave that shook the air quietly came to an end. Her spiritual power had risen to another level. Yiqing Luo's lips curled up slightly as she caressed the glower flame fan lightly. The first thing he did after breaking free from the vines was, he surveyed his surroundings. He had to figure out where he was before he could find a way to escape. It was a place that looked like a cave. They were surrounded by uneven stone walls. A long passageway that could fit 3 people abreast was winding and extending. When Yiqing Luo looked over, she could only see a stretch of darkness in the tunnel. However, what caught Yiqing Luo's attention was, in the middle of the cave, there was a stone wall which was seamlessly connected to the cave, which was extremely eye-catching. The stone wall was different from the surrounding uneven stone walls. This stone wall in the middle was flat and smooth without any flaws. It didn't look like an ordinary momentum. Chapter 40:18. It was giving off a faint, fine glimmer. Very faint. If one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't be able to tell that the stone wall was twined with glimmer. This wasn't an ordinary stone wall. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as her heart grew vigilant. In this kind of place there was such a strange stone wall. Really made one have to think more. On that stone wall, there's a very strong presence. Old Man Song's tone was also extremely grave. Listening to Old Man Song's words, Yiqing Luo's eyes changed slightly as the vigilance in her eyes deepened. She surveyed the surroundings. She didn't sense any signs of life. Even the broken vines on the ground had disappeared unknowingly. Yiqing Luo's vision finally fell onto the stone wall. Her intuition told her that stone wall had the answer she wanted. Her eyes slowly narrowed. After pondering for a moment, she lifted her feet and walked towards the direction of the stone wall. Just as she neared the stone wall, Yiqing Luo could vaguely see the numerous messy lines carved on the stone wall. Densely packed, extremely messy lines. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes suddenly trembled. An unknown emotion inexplicably welled up in her heart. Her feet increased her speed as she neared the stone wall. Just a step away from the stone wall, Yiqing Luo stopped. The lines carved on the stone wall were clearly reflected in Yiqing Luo's eyes. The messy lines which she vaguely saw earlier. Actually, it wasn't lines. But it was a carved mural. Every stroke deep and powerful. What the mural wanted to present was carved vividly. That was a human-shaped mural. Very familiar. So familiar that Yiqing Luo had just seen the mural for the first time. Her mind had already thought of the corresponding mural. If her memory served her right. This mural, when she was in Nirvana Realm, was brought to Nirvana Realm by the people behind the scenes of the Dark Palace. The people behind the scenes of the Dark Palace threw her into the profound Yin Qi to control her. In the sealed palace. She had seen this mural before. Human-shaped mural. Next to it was the outline and shape of the carved accessories. The complicated totem opposite the human-shaped mural were exactly the same. Yiqing Luo was still very confident in her own memories. Therefore there was absolutely no such thing as a mistake. Why would the murals of the Divine Emperor appear here? Until now, the Palace of Darkness still hasn't given up on finding the tomb of the Divine Emperor. This time, he had used the vines to bring her to this cave. Or was he trying to find out the whereabouts of the Divine Emperor's tomb from her? Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly into a bundle. He stared at the stone wall and slowly took 2 steps back. He retreated. Then a wild and mocking laughter rang out. Looking at this mural, don't you feel exceptionally familiar? His laughter resounded in the empty cave. Boundless chilly air surged over in an overwhelming manner, stirring up gusts of hurricanes. Yin Qi spread all around as if darkness had enveloped everything. At the same time he heard the voice. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk as her fingertips danced. The bewitching red glow quickly turned into a gust of strong qi, enveloping her within. The profound phoenix ring flickered. The protective cover that was formed was strengthened. She surveyed the surroundings alertly as she spoke in a deep voice. Since you're already here, why are you still hiding? Ha. That laughter came nearer and nearer. The laughter was sinister, revealing endless ridicule. In Yiqing Luo's vision, a slender figure appeared. Chapter 40:19. But in the blink of an eye, that slender, tall, and straight figure was already standing in front of Yiqing Luo. That was a man. A head full of silver hair, a black robe enveloping him. But it was unable to conceal that muscular body of his. That face in close proximity was extraordinarily handsome, revealing a sinister feeling that made one's entire body turn cold. The most horrifying thing was that man's pair of extremely dark pupils. His eyes were twined with strands of black yin qi. It was as if tiny black lines were surging in his pupils. His entire body was emitting a thick vicious aura. The moment her eyes met his, she felt a chill run down her spine. Yiqing Luo felt a chill down her spine. An icy cold feeling spread from the bottom of her feet all the way to the top of her head. Long time no see, little vessel. The evil man's lips curled as he gave an evil sneer. His cold voice was like the cold water in December, penetrating her heart. No matter how calm Yiqing Luo was, she was unable to conceal her astonishment when she saw the man in front of her. Are you so surprised to see this, lord? The evil man's lips curled. The yin qi that came gushing towards her was chilly. It kept stirring up the negative emotions in her heart. This feeling made Yiqing Luo frown as she gathered her mental energy to block off the man's yin qi. The expression on her face also regained its calmness. Not bad. I haven't seen you for a period of time and you've grown quite fast. You've changed a lot. Seeing that his yin qi didn't affect Yiqing Luo at all, the man's eyes flashed past a deep meaning. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly as she took 2 steps back, pulling a distance away from the man. King of Darkness, why are you here? Yes, King of Darkness. The man in front of her. He was the one in Nirvana realm who wanted to make use of the student's soul to unlock the seal when the dark forces covered the entire West continent. King of Darkness. Why would he appear here? She clearly remembered. She had once again sealed the King of Darkness's physical body using his mental energy. Using Old Man Tsong's words. That was... King of Darkness had to sleep for at least 1,000 years before he had a chance to unlock the seal. It hadn't even been a year. Not only had King of Darkness unlocked the seal, and he had used his complete form to walk out of the seal. Yes, perfect form. Right now, the King of Darkness wasn't a physical body formed from his mental power. Instead, it was a complete body. Do you think that you've already killed me the last time? The King of Darkness laughed coldly. His eyes were filled with killing intent. What a pity. This king is out again. Are you surprised? Was it an accident? Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted. You've collaborated with the Palace of Seclusion. It was not a question but a statement. In this world, perhaps only the person behind the scenes of the Palace of Darkness had the ability to rescue the King of Darkness from the seal. The dark forces from before had all submitted to the Palace of Darkness. It was only natural for the King of Darkness to cooperate with the Nether Palace. The King of Darkness laughed sinisterly as the mysterious yin energy that enveloped the area grew denser and denser. Strand after strand of it started to seep out. He had to admit it. The current King of Darkness was completely different from the King of Darkness he had met in the Nirvana realm. The current King of Darkness. It was like a walking mysterious yin qi. Chapter 40-20. Secluded Palace specially sent the King of Darkness to deal with her. Apparently they were well prepared. Secluded Palace really didn't leave any leeway to deal with her. She wondered if she should feel proud. She was just an ordinary person and the mastermind of Secluded Palace actually schemed against her at this critical juncture. Even specially saved the King of Darkness. This was enough to prove. A long time ago the King of Darkness had already noticed everything about her. He even knew about the hatred between her and the King of Darkness. Once she had used his mental energy to congeal the physical body and sent it into the seal. Now, how would the King of Darkness let her off so easily? Las Luo, this is bad. Old Man Tsong had not expected the King of Darkness to appear here. It was obvious that the King of Darkness was here to seek revenge. If the King of Darkness in front of her was still the mental body she had met in Nirvana realm. Based on Yiqing Luo's current ability to deal with him, Old Man Tsong was totally not worried about Yiqing Luo. But the King of Darkness in front of him was his complete form. He had the power of the King of Darkness at his peak. No matter how fast Yiqing Luo's improvement was, she was still helpless against the King of Darkness at his peak. After all, the King of Darkness was someone who caused a headache in ancient times. Back then, it was the God Emperor who had spent a lot of effort to seal the King of Darkness. An opponent which required the God Emperor to seal personally. It showed how powerful the King of Darkness was at his peak. How could Yiqing Luo be King of Darkness's opponent? Unless the Overlord could rush over. But nearby. Old Man Tsong probed the surroundings anxiously. Since the Secluded Palace is fully prepared and specially made the King of Darkness to block me here, naturally they have sealed off all the aura in this cave. Yiqing Luo naturally heard Old Man Tsong's thoughts as she subconsciously replied, I've ruined the Secluded Palace's plans so naturally they can't wait to teach me a lesson. As for the King of Darkness, he was someone whom I had sealed personally. How could his pride allow me to exist? In this cave she would most likely perish. The other party would not give her any chance to escape. Ha ha ha. The King of Darkness spread open his arms and laughed heartily. Little vessel, obediently become this king's vessel. The more you resist, the more pain you will feel. As the King of Darkness's voice faded, Luo Yunyang's eyes widened. Endless mysterious yin qi covered the entire cave. Boom. The deafening explosion caused the cave to shake violently. Profound Yin Qi in a split second was like a heavenly maiden scattering flowers, entangling towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as her expression congealed. She quickly retreated. He gathered his dark force into the ghastly flame fan and moved his 5 fingers. The glowing flame fan drew a blazing arc in the air, and quickly cleaved the oncoming mysterious Yin Qi. The two forces collided in midair. After the collision of energy, the sound of thunder and lightning could be heard. The cave shook even more violently. Pieces of rubble fell. The berserk energy wave after wave shook the surroundings. Sand and gravel flew everywhere. It was clear that the King of Darkness wasn't serious. It was just a simple test. Probing Yiqing Luo's current strength. To what extent had it reached? The hurricane surged down. The King of Darkness's lips curled upwards as he waved his sleeves. Profound Yin Qi vibrated. Palm wind and profound Yin Qi intertwined. Chapter 40-21. At this moment, Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the disparity between her and King of Darkness. The minute King of Darkness got serious, she was afraid. She couldn't even take one move. This was the King of Darkness at his peak? Yiqing Luo's eyes shot out a ray of fiery brilliance. Her profound energy shook violently. Thick profound energy burst forth. The stronger the opponent was, the more it aroused the battle intent in her. Boom! The explosion caused by the collision of chi waves caused the two of them to take a step back. The profound energy that collided with each other also disintegrated. Yiqing Luo staggered as her fingers which were holding the glower flame fan turned numb. She retracted her hand and looked at her own hand. There was no injury. She squinted her eyes as she looked at King of Darkness. King of Darkness didn't even move his body. He used that pair of extremely cold eyes as he stared deeply at Yiqing Luo. That handsome face was filled with a sinister smile. The little container's resistance really makes me excited. King of Darkness licked his lips as his eyes were filled with a chilly intent. As expected, he was trying to test her strength. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists tightly. King of Darkness glanced at the young lady's tightly clenched hands as the smile on his lips became even colder, revealing a hint of bloodthirstiness. Following that, the profound Yin Qi started to surge again. His attacks were getting more and more ferocious. After a few rounds, Yiqing Luo initially resisted to barely retaliate and finally, she could only display her footwork and make use of her speed to avoid King of Darkness's attacks. King of Darkness wasn't in a hurry to kill her. He allowed Yiqing Luo to run all over the place. But as time went on, Yiqing Luo could only hide and not attack, falling into a passive situation. She would be injured if she lost focus. Old Man Song was so anxious that he wanted to rush out from the Azure Dew bracelet. But he was afraid that he would disturb Yiqing Luo. As time went on, the entire cave was covered with small pieces of broken rocks. Yiqing Luo was in a sorry state. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned sharp. After avoiding King of Darkness's attack, Yiqing Luo's feet suddenly moved. His body suddenly faced the mysterious Yin Qi that was coming at him and charged forward. This sudden action caused the King of Darkness to be startled. In the blink of an eye, Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes, her pink lips moved slightly as she spat out a soft voice. Teleportation's secret art. In the blink of an eye, Yiqing Luo's figure disappeared into that profound Yin Qi which seemed as though it was going to swallow her whole. He blinked again. She appeared on the body of the King of Darkness. His palm fell and gathered a majestic and thick dark force. The King of Darkness had already regained his senses the moment Yiqing Luo disappeared. He sensed the change in the aura around him. The King of Darkness's lips curled into a sinister smile as he acted as though he didn't notice the commotion behind him. And just at the instance when Yiqing Luo's palm wind fell, the King of Darkness turned around. The surging profound Yin Qi was like a raging wave, instantly engulfing Yiqing Luo. The smile on the King of Darkness's face deepened. "Little vessel, do you think you can trick me with such insignificant skills?" He laughed coldly in disdain. Following that, his arm moved and a burst of profound Yin Qi turned into a slender rope-like thing as it entered the profound Yin Qi. After a few rounds of probing, the King of Darkness's expression changed slightly. Then he waved his sleeves and swiftly dispersed the profound Yin Qi. But there wasn't a single figure in the profound Yin Qi. The King of Darkness's face sunk slightly, and as though he had sensed something, he raised his head and looked ahead. Chapter 40:22. He saw that the girl who should have been swallowed by the mysterious Xianxia was now holding her shoulder and floating in the air facing him. The pain in her shoulder made Yiqing Luo frown slightly. Just now, no matter how fast she was, he was also injured by the King of Darkness's remnant might. However, it was not a loss. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards as she shot a glance at the King of Darkness. A glint flashed past her eyes. The King of Darkness kept staring at Yiqing Luo. He didn't notice the change in Yiqing Luo's eyes. However, he did not miss the slight frown on her face due to the pain just now. The King of Darkness stared at her shoulder and a ruthless glint flashed in his eyes. "Why don't you beg me, little vessel? Maybe I won't kill you then." "Kill me?" Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as she scoffed softly. Her charming eyes were suffused with a piercingly cold glint. "Are you sure that your master will let you kill me?" "Master?" These two words caused the King of Darkness to frown. The mysterious Xianxia on his face also became thicker because of his emotions. These two words made him very unhappy. "I have a cooperative relationship with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness." A cooperative relationship was not a master-servant relationship. Yiqing Luo sneered. "Are you sure? Cooperation?" The Gloomy Palace had helped the King of Darkness undo the seal that the Divine Emperor had set. It must have taken a lot of effort. It was obvious that the King of Darkness owed the Palace of Darkness. The relationship between the two. It did not seem like the kind of relationship between Tenyu Palace and Zhou Xian. Moreover, Zhou Xian's status was currently equal to that of the Gloomy Palace. However, the current King of Darkness was different. The dark forces had all submitted to the Palace of Darkness. After tens of thousands of years, the King of Darkness had awakened once more. How could he fight against the Palace of Darkness? So, why would the Palace of Darkness spend so much effort to undo the King of Darkness seal just to let the King of Darkness deal with her? It could be said. The reason why the Netherworld Palace had awakened the King of Darkness was to add a powerful general to their faction. Adding on to the hatred between King of Darkness and Yiqing Luo. The King of Darkness was the best chess piece. He said that Abysmal Palace was his master. There was nothing wrong with those words. From the ridicule in Yiqing Luo's eyes, the King of Darkness could tell what she was thinking. The self-esteem which was once destroyed by Yiqing Luo was once again crushed. The King of Darkness's face sank, and the profound Xianxia in his body surged like a huge mouth, emitting a surging pressure. Yiqing Luo's body tensed up, as the protective barrier around her became even more solid. In his heart he was vigilant and solemn. However, on the surface he was still as calm as ever. His lips curled into a mocking smile. Is the King of Darkness angry now? The King of Darkness's icy cold eyes locked onto Yiqing Luo. The profound Xianxia in his eyes seemed to be brandishing its fangs and claws at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo only laughed. He laughed carelessly. The smile pierced the eyes of the King of Darkness. His pride had been pricked. He, the King of Darkness, had once used his mental power to form a physical body, but this little girl had forced him back into the seal. Now, how dare she laugh at him? Did he not put him in his eyes at all? Don't teach her a lesson. Did she really think that he didn't dare to kill her, so she had nothing to fear? The King of Darkness's eyes were shrouded by the profound Xianxia. It was extremely dark. It was like a bottomless pool. Chapter 40:23. With the King of Darkness standing on the ground, the mystic Yin energy spread out like a spiderweb. It was so dense that not even wind could pass through it. As the mysterious Xianxia spread in all directions, it was like cold Xianxia had covered the entire cave. In the air, because of this strange power, there was a crackling sound. From time to time, a flash of lightning-like light would flash past. The mysterious Xianxia was like a sharp blade, crazily cutting the surroundings. That tyrannical and fierce Xianxia, which was close to destroying the heavens and earth, was mighty. The profound phoenix ring on Yiqing Luo's finger suddenly felt scorching hot. The protective shield formed by the flowing purple light showed signs of cracking. Yiqing Luo looked down at the profound phoenix ring. She clenched her fair fingers. "Little Luo, don't be silly." Old Man Song seemed to have seen through Yiqing Luo's thoughts and immediately stopped her. The opponent is the original body of the King of Darkness. Even though he has just woken up and his strength has yet to return to his peak. Even the current King of Darkness could easily take your life if he wanted to. Old Man Song's tone became anxious. The surrounding mysterious yin qi is too dense. Once the profound phoenix ring's protective shield is removed, you will be affected by the mysterious yin qi. Yes. Yiqing Luo wanted to remove the protective cover on her. The King of Darkness's energy fluctuations were simply too great. If this continued, the profound phoenix ring might break because of this. The profound phoenix ring was the first thing that Zhou Xian had given her. It could be said that it was their token of love. Moreover, the Netherworld Phoenix Ring and Netherworld Dragon Ring were ancient love rings. They had their own consciousness. If the Netherworld Phoenix Ring was broken, what about the Netherworld Dragon Ring? Las Luo. Old Man Song's white brows were knitted tightly, his stomach was in a mess as he tried to persuade Yiqing Luo. However, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. In the end, he let out a heavy sigh. Forget it, I don't care anymore. Yiqing Luo's decision. Very few can change. Furthermore, Old Man Song was very clear about the relationship between Yiqing Luo and Zhou Xian. If the profound phoenix ring were to overload and break, Yiqing Luo felt pained and guilty for a long period of time. After Old Man Song dropped that sentence, he completely disappeared from Yiqing Luo's consciousness. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and clenched her fingers even tighter. Old Man Song, I know you care about me. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. His voice faded. Yiqing Luo's 5 fingers suddenly pressed on the profound phoenix ring. A ray of flowing light faded from Yiqing Luo's body. What followed was an earth-shattering aura. An aura that was even colder and colder than the sinister aura he had felt before. Yiqing Luo's face instantly turned pale. His fingers gripping the glowing flame fan tightened. The little container sure has guts. You don't need external protection anymore? Are you planning to die bravely? King of Darkness sensed the change in Yiqing Luo and his cold eyes lit up. Then his smile grew colder and colder. Yiqing Luo didn't reply him. His hands moved quickly. His dark force also poured out. Under the impenetrable mysterious yin qi, streaks of dazzling red light were constantly darting about. King of Darkness's smile deepened as his eyes were filled with bloodthirstiness and the interest of teasing his prey. I really don't want to break your dying dream. Don't you want to know if I dare to kill you? I will tell you the answer now. He abruptly flew up. His entire body was filled with malevolent dark force, majestic and vast. Chapter 40-24. Bam! Majestic huge waves crashed against the cave. A burst of profound waves collided. The entire cave shook as gravel flew everywhere. A powerful aura surged. But under the surging profound waves, the gravel broke into pieces. But the cave didn't show any signs of collapsing. The profound waves exploded as the air billowed. King of Darkness's vision swept past the surging air billows as his face sunk. It was this move again. Blink movement secret art. His eyes were filled with a chilly intent. This king will break your legs, let's see how you're going to hide. Yiqing Luo was already having a hard time executing the blink movement secret art. The surrounding profound yin qi had spread throughout the entire cave. The aftershocks of the profound waves were rippling outwards one after another. She was affected by it by no means. From King of Darkness's eyes, Yiqing Luo could see a thick murderous intent. Did he really want to kill her? Was he angry from embarrassment? Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as her slender fingers gripped the glower flame fan tightly. Although the blink movement secret art could temporarily avoid King of Darkness's attack. But the amount of mental energy required was not low. Furthermore, don't think that this cave was huge. But if King of Darkness was serious, he could totally cover the entire cave. If she continued to agitate him, there was a possibility that he would really go against the agreement with Secluded Palace and kill her. The murderous intent in King of Darkness's eyes wasn't fake. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she took a deep look at King of Darkness. Deep in his heart he felt a little anxious. It had already reached this stage. Why hadn't it acted up yet? Could it be that her plan had failed? If it really failed, then wouldn't her intentionally agitating King of Darkness be seeking her own death? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as her heart trembled slightly. She had to think of a solution as soon as possible. Otherwise the loss of energy would put her in even more danger. Yiqing Luo stared at King of Darkness's actions vigilantly. She quickly wiped the blood off her body onto the azure aqua ring. Tightly and swiftly, it brushed past the azure aqua chain. The two azure aqua divine weapons flashed red. A surge of scorching energy flowed into Yiqing Luo's body. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. Very quickly, he endured the discomfort of the power assaulting his limbs and bones and spread the power of the divine artifact to his limbs and bones. The bewitching red light enveloped the young girl. It also made the young girl's red dress look even more like a raging flame. When he saw this scene, King of Darkness abruptly stopped his attacks as his eyes lit up. His scorching gaze was fixated on Yiqing Luo, vast water divine relic. Yes. The presence on Yiqing Luo's body was the presence of the vast aqua divine armament. And there was more than one. Not only that time. He had intentionally allowed Yiqing Luo to take away the azure water god relic. He was right. Back then when Yiqing Luo was able to obtain the first azure water divine relic, Azure Water Ring, it was designed by the King of Darkness. Back then he had specifically asked the Wolf Saint technique to send the profound Yin Qi into the deep water ring. Once Yiqing Luo contracted, the profound Yin Qi could control Yiqing Luo. The conceited and arrogant him did not expect. In the future he would be defeated by Yiqing Luo, a young lass whose hair was not even fully grown. Unexpectedly, Yiqing Luo had not only purified the profound Yin Qi in the Azure Dew Ring, she had even obtained the second Azure Water Divine Relic. The murderous intent in King of Darkness's eyes slowly faded. The gaze which he looked at Yiqing Luo was extremely greedy. She was the vessel for the divine phoenix profound jade heart. That profound jade heart of hers was the key to finding the divine relic. The Azure Water Divine Relic. He was determined to get it. Chapter 40-25. With the help of the God Relic, Yiqing Luo's energy suddenly rose sharply. Tyrannical profound energy encircled her entire body as it attacked and circled around her. The dazzling red light formed a murderous arc in the air. Looking at Yiqing Luo's transformation, the expression on King of Darkness's face was filled with joy and greed. As though Yiqing Luo's transformation, it already belonged to him. Let this king experience the power of these two God relic. The King of Darkness leaped into the air, and with a wave of his sleeves, the mysterious Yin Qi surged out like a raging wave. This time, King of Darkness's attack wasn't filled with killing intent like before. It was a kind of probing attack. He was probing the power of the God relic. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes. Her narrow eyes were filled with a biting cold glint. The glower flame fan opened up and the raging flame profound energy poured out. Bam bam bam, the raging flame profound energy collided with the profound Yin Qi. A deafening explosion clashed with the tremors in the cave. King of Darkness's eyes shone even brighter. The power of the God relic is indeed not bad. To him, it was merely not bad. What made King of Darkness even more surprised was this small vessel could actually take the power of the God relic as its own. Using the power of the God relic, it wouldn't suffer from the backlash of the God relic. It was indeed a vessel with the divine phoenix profound jade heart. Even the God relic accepted her. If he obtained this small vessel, he would keep it as his own. He could use this small vessel to search for the vast water God relic and obtain it. Why would he bother about the palace lord of the secluded palace? Had trying to use the gratitude of unlocking the seal to coerce him to do something? Did he, King of Darkness, look like someone who knew how to repay gratitude? If not for his power after awakening had yet to fully recover, how would he possibly cooperate with the secluded palace? Wouldn't it be better to just kidnap Yiqing Luo? Really? Something better is at the back. Yiqing Luo's pink lips rose slightly as her narrow eyes flashed a trace of blood-red glow. She suddenly leaped up. The glower flame fan in her hands was faintly discernible in the illusion. The alluring red glow was like an electric current as it revolved around her body. The dark force released was incomparably vast. The dazzling red light surged out like a tide. Boom! A loud sound rang out. The power that erupted from the red light completely dispersed the profound Yin Qi that filled the sky. The entire cave was filled with large patches of red. Violent and tyrannical Qi waves were constantly surging. The wind swept up the rubble everywhere. The King of Darkness' eyes shone even brighter. His gaze towards Yiqing Luo could be said to be fiery. Swish! The sound of something tearing through the air rang in his ears. The King of Darkness's eyes flashed and he dodged to the side. The sharp wind blade brushed past him. It was the wind blades of the glowing flame fan. He had just dodged the wind blade. Immediately after, the tyrannical aura that came from all directions instantly entangled him. No matter how fast the King of Darkness reacted, he couldn't do anything. He was also blasted by this tyrannical aura. His body staggered back a few steps from the impact. The immense pressure was squeezing his internal organs. The King of Darkness's pupils dilated slightly as he raised his hand and pressed it on his chest. His eyes were filled with disbelief and a faint excitement. Yes, excitement. Other than the last time when his mental energy congealed into a physical body which was injured by Yiqing Luo. His body, this body. How long had it been since his real body was injured?